Alright guys, so I shot this nice buck this morning here on my father-in-law's place in Kentucky, and we've got him all processed out except for caping out the hide. So I thought a pretty good video to do would be kind of like a how-to on how to cape out your head. So if you're like me and you hunt out of state, and you hunt out of state quite a bit, this is something that would definitely save you some money to get good at doing. If you're going to plan on mounting your deer, because most states won't allow any bone cross state line. I know North Carolina won't. So you've got to completely debone your meat, and you've got to have your head caped out with your skull cap. All you can have off your head is your skull cap, unless you go ahead and boil it and clean it out. Now each state's different, so I'm not trying to quote state law, but just know what your regulations are for your state. But if you're in a state where you have to have your head caped out before it across the state line, this video might be for you. Now I'll give you a kind of like a word of caution here. Don't do this for the first time on a buck that you're planning on mounting. So I say that, what I mean by that is if you shoot a small buck, or if somebody that you know kills a buck that they're not going to mount, maybe they're just going to do a European mount, or maybe they're just going to keep the antlers off of, or even if you wanted to try doing a doe to start out, get good at this before you do it on something you're going to mount, because you can really tear this up and you can really screw yourself as far as being able to get your deer mounted. You might even have to get a new hide. So like I said, guys, this video today is going to be on how to cape out your deer head for getting it mounted.
This is why we live. Smoke him, son! This is why we live. Got him, son! Woo! Got him, son! Yes, baby! This is why we live. This is why we live.
I told you it would work. Got him, baby. Got him, son. Woo! Yeah! Whoa! He's a giant.
Alright guys, so one of the big things to start out with is you want to make sure that on your hide, you want to make sure that you have enough hide. So what I like to do when I'm caping it out, if I'm going to do this myself, I like to go ahead and cape out about a foot behind the shoulder. And what that does is, if you want to do anything like a pedestal mount or anything like that, this gives you enough hide that the taxidermist can do pretty much any mount that you want. So where the back of the front shoulder and the legs are, go about a foot behind that. It's going to be a little bit too much. They're going to have to cut some off, but it's worth it in the long run because you know you're going to have enough hide. So let's go ahead and do this. And one thing to keep in mind is when you are cutting hair, it's going to dull your knife. So I'm just going to, you're not going to be able to see this very well, but I'm just going to cut. Actually, I'll move one of these cameras over here where you can see it. That way you can kind of get a feel for what I'm actually doing. Let's see if that'll hold right there. There we go. Alright, so I've got the back of the front shoulders here, and I'm going to go about a foot behind, and that's where I'm going to cut. So really it's almost about the midway point of the body. So what I'm going to do here is go back, cut through, and then I'm going to get under the hide where I'm not dulling my knife so bad. And I'm just going to make an incision. It's easier to do this when it's on the deer, but a lot of times you're going to wind up, if somebody's helping you cape it out or whatever, like today my father-in-law was helping me. It was nice to have his help, and he had, by the time I got done on the phone with people and everything else, he had already caped most of this off. So he had already pulled it off, so we didn't worry about cutting it. And I knew I was going to do this video today, so we just going with it. Alright, so my first cuts are going to be from my antler burrs, which are right here. Your burr caps on the bottom. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come pretty much behind where the thick hair is, right in front of the ears. I'm going to cut back in a V. Kind of in between. You want your V to come back to kind of in between where your ears are on this deer. So I'll make my cut, and once I make my V, I'll try to get the video around here where I can show you. One key thing here I will recommend, these Havalon knives are very, very key, or like a razor blade or something like that, but I found these Havalons are my favorite just because the blade is small and I can really get in there. Just be careful because they are sharp. Alright, so like I said, you're going to start at the cap, kind of pull your hair back and out of the way. And I'm going to go in right behind his cap here. And just go ahead and FYI, a lot of times these deer have ticks on tops of their heads where you wouldn't think a tick would normally be, but I know most of them that I've done in areas where ticks are pretty prevalent, they're going to have ticks pretty bad. The big thing is try to keep your hair out of the way as much as possible. It makes the taxidermist's job quite a bit easier. I think this blade's dull. I caped out a buddy of mine's deer in Ohio. Let me just change blades out and see if it's any sharper. Try to find my same cut here. There we go. Alright, I made my first cut. Now I'm going to come back here to the other side. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but like I said, the closer it is together and the less hacking that you do, the easier it's going to be on your taxidermist, and ultimately he's going to be much happier. He or she is going to be much happier. Alright, so that wasn't the best one that I've done, but it serves the purpose. I'm going to spin them around. Right there's your flap. It goes to each cap and it comes down. Now from there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a little slit right at the back end of that. Take your knife and go in under the hide. Don't cut your hair here if you can help it. And then just all you do is just make you a slit like a 3 to 4 or 5 inches. Just make that slit right there coming straight down the neck. And like I said, when you go through the hide right here, it's something that your taxidermist is going to have to sew back, and the more you can keep it in a straight line and through the thicker part of the fur and the hair, the better off it's going to be on your taxidermist. Alright, so let me split that where you can kind of see up in there a little better. And you won't see this because the hair is so thick here. He's going to be able to sew it up. He or she will be able to sew it up. Alright, so let me spin the deer around. You got a flap, both sides and the top. All it is, 2 cuts here, 1 cut down the back of the neck. I've seen where guys have split all the way down the back of the neck, and I had to do that on my elk, but if you can help it, the least amount of cutting that you can do is a lot less work on your taxidermist in the long run. So now all you do is you just fold back these flaps and go around just a little bit so you can open these flaps up. And then this is where it's going to start getting a little bit more of a delicate process. So once you get these flaps kind of opened up where you can get in here and work, I like to start on my burr caps on my antlers. So if you'll notice around your burr caps, they don't actually go flush to the head. The bottoms go, the pedicle goes flush to the head, but the caps kind of fold over. So this is where I like to have this little Havalon, or you can use a flathead screwdriver. You just got to be real careful, you'll bust your knuckles on the burr caps. I take this Havalon and actually get up under the burr cap and I just I take my knife, I don't know if you can see, based on the back of my hand, I take my knife and I get under the burr cap and I just twist as I go, and I work my way around the burr cap that way. It's easier to me to do it this way than it is with a screwdriver. Just remember that you are cutting all the way up against the bone, because you can get away here and not be paying attention and you're actually cutting the hair, and it'll make it a pain for the taxidermist to be able to tuck the skin back up under the pedicles and the burr caps whenever they get done doing your deer, when they're mounting it. So the closer you can get here, the better off you're going to be. And the least amount of hair you can cut, the better. It's just going to look more natural when he puts this all together. He or she puts this all together. Guys, if I say he, I don't actually mean he. I'm saying he or she. Just remember that. So don't nobody get offended here. Well, some deer are harder than others depending on how crazy your burrs or your caps are. If they get, like on my real big deer, my caps were so big that they really hung over the hide, and that sometimes gets a little bit harder to cut. Just take your time with it. It is a little bit delicate, but as long as you take your time, it's not bad. And I like to fold my hair down as I go to try to keep from cutting it when I go around the cap here. And when you're doing this, when you get done, check yourself good for ticks, because there's usually ticks crawling all over these deer's heads. Even like today is November 16th. Even on days in the middle of November like this, almost every one I've ever done has had ticks crawling around on it. Alright, so that's pretty good there. Once I get it away from the cap, guys, all you're doing is just cutting up under the hide. Let me take this little camera here, see if I can put it in a way where you can see as I'm cutting here. Alright, so you can see I got it kind of cut away, and I'm just kind of cutting back here. This piece of meat right here on the top is actually where your ear butt comes up, and once we get it cut back enough, we're actually going to cut that ear butt right off, and then your taxidermist can take the ear itself out, the meat from the ear. They can take it out once you bring it into them. So let's go ahead and do this other side with this different camera angle, and hopefully you can kind of see what I'm doing here. So I get up under the burr cap, and I just work my way around. And if you got a little bit of hair on here, that's fine. When I'm cutting around, if I miss a little bit as I'm going, it's not going to hurt anything. He's still going to be able to tuck that. like I said, try to be careful here, guys, because you can screw up pretty quick and make it a really difficult time when the taxidermist goes to put this hide back up under your burrs here, your caps. And you can see there, it's just peeled right away, all in one circle. He can put it right back up under there, and that's what you want. Alright, so now that we got it peeled around the caps, all we're going to do now is continue working around the skull here. Just cutting back, peeling it back little bits at a time. And I'm going to go back to my ears, and right where you can feel it, there's just a big chunk of meat where the ear butt goes up into the side of the head. So I cut that one, got it off out of the way, and I'll bring the camera around here and I'll show you this one on the right side. Alright, so this is what I'm talking about right here. Caping around, that where all that meat comes into the head here, you just cut right down that. Eventually you'll get down into the ear canal, and you'll see what I'm right there. You'll see that. That's your ear canal. All you're doing is just cutting down through that. Just make sure you're not cutting through hide, and all you're doing is cutting meat. And these areas right here is what I'm talking about. It's kind of nice to practice on a deer that you're not going to get mounted. That way, if you screw it up, then you're not hurting anything, because you're going to really regret it if you try to do this and ruin your hide off your deer, so, or whatever animal you're doing. Pretty much all animals are pretty close to the same. If they've got antlers, it's going to be pretty much the same as far as the process of getting the hide off of the head. So now I'm just going to go ahead and keep working my way around, and then once I get a big enough opening up here, I'm going to pull the hide over the neck, which I try to cut down as far as I can on the neck. You can get your neck measurement around the neck if you want to, or your taxidermist can figure out the measurement just based off of the hide. Alright, so let's start cutting around the neck here. And you can see that ear canal right there. That's what we cut off. And like I said, your taxidermist will take and turn that inside out and cut that the rest of the way out, however he or she wants to do it. And I can do this a little bit faster, but right now I'm just trying to kind of show y'all how I do it, and I'm sure there's other ways to do it. This is just how I was taught to do it and how it works, and I haven't had any complaints from any taxidermist yet that I've dealt with after doing my own. So keep that in mind. There are other ways to do this stuff. This is just how I do it. And as you're doing this, try to get as much meat off as possible without cutting your hide. Just be careful and make sure you're cutting hide and not meat. Or I'm sorry, cutting meat and not hide. Because you definitely don't want to be cutting holes in your hide. The closer you get to the face, it's harder for them to fix that. Once we get up to where the eyeballs are, the eye sockets, I'll show you kind of how I do it. There's probably other ways to do this as well, but I'll show you how I do it. Alright, so I take and fold the hide back and get my finger, I push the eyelashes out of the way. Hopefully you can see that. I take and push the eyelashes out of the way with my finger as good as I can. And I stick my finger in the eyeball socket, and I try to get it as far back as I can, back up against the socket. So as you're cutting, stay on the bone, like on the actual socket. That's the best way I've ever had it explained to me. So once you get your finger up in there, try not to cut your finger, but stay on the bone as good as you can and work your way around. And you'll start seeing like a membrane back in there, and that's kind of like your eyelid, behind your eyelids or behind the deer's eyelids. And the closer you can get, see you're starting to open up, see the eyeball, we're cutting right on that eyeball. I mean, as close as you can get to it. They don't need all this, but when you cut it this way, it gives them the max amount of material to tuck up in there. So let me lay this thing on its side. And we're still cutting as close to that eyeball as we can. You get up in there, cut that eyelid as much as you can. Like I said, be careful with the eyelashes. Don't really mash down and pull on them, because you can kind of tear them up. Alright, we got all that membrane there, so now we're staying along the bone. And see, we got that whole eye socket out. staying along the bone. I'll pull my finger out now, and you'll see the meat start going down towards where the tear duct is. And what you're going to do is you're going to run that tear duct, tiny cuts up against the bone here. Stay up against the bone the whole way, and you'll get down in that pocket where that tear duct sits, and you'll just peel that tear duct right out of there, just like that. So careful here not to cut the hide. Specifically, be careful not to cut the hide. Alright, now we're past that point. I'm going to flip it over and do the other side of this deer here, and then I'll cut back over and we'll talk about the mouth. Alright, so we got the eyes cut out. Now we're going to work our way down a little ways to where the corners of the mouth come together. This deer has like a hard spot right here on the top of his nose, like he broke his nose or something. That is weird. This deer's broke his nose at one point or another. Got a real thick meat spot with a point, like a gouge in his nose. Probably got gored by another deer. Alright, so let me grab this camera. Alright, so flip it on this side. Alright, so now we're to the mouth. Take your finger and run your finger. Be careful because their teeth are kind of sharp in the back. Hopefully you can see this. I got it flipped back. You'll see my finger wiggling right there. I got it stuck way back in his jaw. And be careful right here because you can't cut your finger. But just cut right at the end of your finger, right where all that jaw meat and all that stuff comes up. You're going to cut there, and as you're cutting here, you're going to cut as close to the jaw, or close to the top of the teeth as possible, because what that's doing is that's giving you, your taxidermist, as much to tuck in as when he's mounting your deer, and it's just making their life much easier. Alright, so we just did that. Now we're going to do the same thing on the bottom. Cutting and leaving as much as you can. And you're going to cut it around to where you get past the teeth. Once you get past the teeth, we'll go to the other side and do the other side the same way. Stick that finger up there. Cut way back at the back behind your finger so you don't cut your finger. And once you get the meat started, you should be able to see Just lay it down. Now that we got it started, you should be able to see where the skin meets up against your teeth on your deer. And you just work your way along those teeth until you get past the teeth. Now we're going to do the same thing on the bottom. Cutting right along that tooth line. Alright, now we're going to finish going down the nose. Alright guys, now on the nose, once you get down to a certain point, you should feel that cartilage in the nose where it starts getting kind of soft at the end of the bones, and it's what it is that black part on the face of the deer. That's where you're getting to that point. So when you get to the cartilage, all you got to do here is you'll feel that soft spot. I'll keep spinning them around. Work the bottom down now. Let's see if we can get this bottom off. Jaws are pretty tight. We're not going to be able to get that bottom off. We've got to get the top off first. Alright, so you keep on skinning around till you get to the soft spot, and then you're going to start cutting down through that soft cartilage. My knife's getting kind of dull. Yep, so you just cut right through that. The jaws on this deer are kind of locked up, so not really able to get in there good to show you, but you just get your finger under there and just kind of cut that meat back as good as you can. And what you're doing here, I mean, you can not leave as much as I am, but like I said, like I keep saying, it's making the process for your taxidermy, the taxidermy process in a whole, it just makes it easier. Makes it easier on your taxidermist. The more you leave on as far as around the face for them to tuck. And this dulls your blades out on your knives super quick, so that's why I like using this Havalon. It doesn't tear up my good knives. And these blades are pretty cheap for what you can get them for in the packs. Still working my way around the bottom here. Be careful, you will cut your fingers, because I have done it quite a few times. Alright, so this you can see the front really good. I just get off as much of that meat as I can. I cut right around the bone line where the roof of the mouth is. Alright, so we should be far enough down to get to the nose now. Just hold that skin back and you just cut right through the cartilage, which you'll feel it. It cuts right through it. It doesn't feel like bone, it's just a little harder than meat. You're going to cut all the way down until you start hitting bone. Once you get down to the bottom, you're going to go around the front, which I'm hoping you can kind of see. You go right around the front where like when they're doing a lip curl, that skin that you see, you want to try to hug those teeth and the bottom of that bone as much as you can there. You don't want to cut out something that your taxidermist might need as far as that skin there. I'm hoping you can see this right there. Just like that. And that real white section that you're seeing is where it's cut, where I'm cutting through the cartilage there. You run that all the way to the end. You see we got all that lip left for them to tuck in. And on the bottom, same way. Now you can see it a little better. You just go right along the tooth line. You cut all that skin. Cut right around the front. That's it. Flip this back around. And that's what it should look like. You got your neck back here and your body. Got them twisted around. Just like that. So you got your little flap here that we cut. What I like to do here is I take my ears and fold them in. Take my nose and I fold it over. And then I just roll it. Like I said before, you want to be easy on the eyelashes. That's really the main thing on the face that's kind of delicate. And all I do is I just roll my hide here. And the reason you roll the face in on itself like that is because it helps with, see, we got a little bit of leaf and mess and stuff in here, but not too bad. What it helps with when you roll your face in like that is it helps keep it from getting freezer burnt if your deer is going to be in the freezer for a little while. Alright, so lastly, in order to make your deer legal, you're going to take your Sawzall. This is easier with 2 people, but you can do it with 1. I like to take my arm and brace my antlers here, run my Sawzall right across the bridge of that bone, right in between the 2 eyes. Alright, we might be deep enough there. So once you get down to a certain point, flip it around and do the same thing coming from the other way. The big thing here is to try to stay off of your antlers as much as possible. Okay, so I didn't cut quite deep enough on the front. That's it. And you can see down in there, your brain and all that stuff, that's what, because of the EHD and stuff like that, that's what states really don't want. So you just take and flop that out, and then that's all out of the way. And really the last thing that I like to do is I like to take my knife and I get in all this meat here and I try to get it out. Now remember, there's a membrane, and I'll show you that here in a minute. Let me get this meat out and I'll talk about it. So you try to get as much meat off of here as you can. And if you still need to get more meat off of it, you can take salt and put on it, or you can take borax and put on it. Borax, for me, borax seems to work the best. You can just take and pour you a pile of borax out, and it just kind of, once you get most of this meat off there, it just kind of dries it out. sucks all the moisture out of the meat. It'll keep it from getting rotten or whatever. That's the big thing, just keeping the flies and stuff off it pretty much. The brain matter and spinal cord and all that stuff, that's what the EHD regulations and stuff are mostly geared towards. But the cleaner you can get this thing, the better off you'll be. And that's it. Now, what I was talking about on the little film inside. So if you take the end of your knife and you feel, there we go. I'm gonna peel a little bit of it back where you can see it. That film right there, that film goes all the way around the inside of the head, and that's what holds that brain in there. Just like pretty much, I don't know exactly what it's called, but it's just like the film that goes inside of our heads. It's the same thing. If any of y'all know what it's called, comment down below and let me know. I'd be interested to know. I could do research, but I just never have. Felt like I needed to do the research on that, but I've just always called it a film. This has to be removed because this is considered part of the brain matter. And I honestly recommend doing this with latex gloves. I just don't have any with me right now at the farm, or I would be, because most of the time, especially like if I'm in the back country or whatever, or way back in and I'm caping a deer out, I have rubber gloves in my kill kit. And the reason behind that, mostly for me, is because a lot of times I'm going a couple days without showering, or being around a big enough water source where I can actually wash my hands. And I just don't want to walk around with blood and brain and possibly risk getting an infection or whatever in my blood from an open cut or anything like that. Here, I'm not as worried about it because I can go wash my hands and do whatever I need to do. But when I'm on public land, I've always got my kill kit with me. If it's not with me, it's in the truck. And that's where my rubber gloves are. But I came in late last night from Ohio, so my stuff was pretty scattered this morning, and I just didn't grab any gloves. I used all my box of rubber gloves when I was in Ohio. I actually had to change my wheel bearings in my truck on my back right tire, and that's what I used all my rubber gloves, trying to keep that rear end oil from getting on my hands, because everybody knows how much that stuff stinks. Pretty much here I'm just peeling as I go with my knife. Some of these come off easier than others. If it dries a little bit, a lot of times it's a little easier to get out, but sometimes it just makes it a pain, so it's hard to tell either way. But that's it. Now we are legal and ready to transport this deer. So anyways, guys, hopefully you got something out of that video. I know it's going to be a long one, but it's kind of one of those you got to go step by step. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to comment down below. If not, thanks for watching. If you do have questions, I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. Like I said, don't quote me on state regulations and laws, because that's not what I'm here to do. I'm just here to show you what I know, and some ways that you can save yourself some money in the long run by being able to cape your own deer out, and it keeps you legal going down the road. So anyways, guys, I appreciate you watching this video. Remember to live your life to the fullest, and use your passions to bless others. We'll see you on the next one.